all the effort that goes on to conserving wild dogs.
The relationship with Jules, where we're working together, it has been fantastic. Because he has been involving me as we go out in the field to look for wild dogs. He initially asked question, my friend, Simon, where can we find dogs? Where are we heading to? Where can we find an open spot where these dogs can be heading to? Where can we find a spot of water where we can find wild dogs? So the relationship has been so fantastic because he has been involving me to make sure that he follow all the ground procedure for filming, and that has been given to him by the Department of National Parks and Wildlife.
In the Adelaide suburb of Osborne.
This is no longer a question of is there going to be enough work for our neighbourhood shipbuilding program in South Australia. It's a question of where are we getting the workers from. We're talking about massive amounts of job.
Customers continue to have access to their deposits this morning, that they can get on with their really important job of helping to grow the economy. This is a very important sector to us, the tech and life sciences sector, and we're very pleased that we've reached an outcome that supports the sector, supports the UK's successful financial services industry, and of course protects the taxpayer.
Seb Walker, partner at Tricumen, joins us now. Seb, great to have you with us as we continue to digest the fallout from the collapse of SVB and all of the turmoil in the U.S. banking system. Looking at the European banks, we saw quite a steep sell-off this week as we were just looking. Commerce Bank lost more than 10%, Credit Suisse lost about 10% yesterday. It looks as though some of those European banks are going to bounce back at the open today. But what is your view? Do you think this is cause for major concern among the European banking sector?
No, absolutely not. I think one of the issues here is people have failed to look at the fundamentals of SVB. And essentially, the challenge they had was a mismatch between their lending and their deposits. And that's just not the case in most of the European banks. They have a...
Fascinating. So I suppose, if that's all true, everything you just said, these European banks must look pretty attractive at these levels.
Yeah, I mean, that would seem to make a lot of sense. I think there's still a lot of concern in the market, and some of that is driven probably by misunderstanding and a lack of perhaps basic bank math to understand what's going on the balance sheet. But certainly when I look across Europe, and indeed a lot of the US banks, I know there's been some concern about First Republic, but even in that case, we see quite a different picture in terms of their balance sheet.
You're saying what we're witnessing in the markets is overreaction and knee-jerk in terms of the selling as investors and depositors take flight in some situations. We need to have other lenders, other banks active in that sector, yet it comes with high risk and it doesn't fit the profile, the loan profile of some of the major banks. So how do we ensure that this is a sector that is adequately capitalized in the future? Who steps in?
It's a really interesting question, this. So if we look back at many of the banking collapses, go back to Lehman or Bear Stearns, one of the issues
This year, in the joint UK-Australian AUKUS summits, that could evolve depending on what China or others in the region.
12% or so. So which will be the stocks in focus today?
On a given...
I'll see you later.
That's down to the S&P.
They're essentially like, or to seek refuge in a land far away. It's heartwarming to have seen the empathy toward.
You must be pleased to hear that, won't he?
There's always something to worry about, Sally. You're right, so people will be focused now on wages. The thing to remember as we contextualize these numbers is that wages, nominal wages, have been rising because inflation has been so high that people aren't seeing their real wages. That's wages after inflation rising. So everybody feels poor even though nominal wages are increasing. Now, of course, the thing to remember as we look forward is that wages are what you're going to earn in the future, whereas...
Well, and that will be read very carefully by the US Federal Reserve. Your thoughts?
Yes, so the forecasts are expecting inflation in the US to fall from about 6.4% to about 6%. So that's a very positive view and reflects ongoing narrative of declining inflation in the US. So if that happens, then there'll be less pressure on the Federal Reserve and those comments we heard earlier from Michelle, the forecast from Goldman's may well be right. But of course, if inflation remains sticky, and it is a measure with a lot of noise, then that may throw everything into confusion, and people will be concerned about the need for the Federal Reserve to keep raising interest rates or keep interest rates high, and the impact that will have on the economy. But as investors, it's so important to look through just these day-by-day numbers, all of the noise and the comment that surrounds it, and really think about the long term. We're coming out of a very unusual period in the global economy caused by the pandemic,
Okay.
the war in Ukraine.
Thank you, Dan. Good to talk to you. Dan Kev there from Morningstar. Well, let's look at China, where the government has announced it will once again start issuing a range of visas to foreigners from Wednesday, seen as a major easing of travel restrictions that had been in place since the outbreak of the pandemic. Let's hear more from Katie Silver.
So it's a major easing that has been announced. We've heard, for example, that they're going to be opening up to about 4 different categories of people. So first of all, those who had visas issued prior to March 28, 2020 will now be able to re-enter. And some of these, for example, had multiple entry visas that were going to last in the order of about 10 years. They're also going to allow foreigners to apply for visas, and as well they're going to see visa-free entry in ports such as in Hainan and for cruise ship arrivals in Shanghai. And then finally, they're also going to ease restrictions for those arriving from Hong Kong, Macau, and Asian countries. So that is one aspect to it. The other is outbound travel. So Chinese travellers going abroad. And up until now, there's been about 20 countries that group tours are able to go to, and now they're extending this to being about 60 countries. Now, one analyst I've just been speaking with said that they've made the choices of which countries these will be somewhat politically. Perhaps those countries that have been more cordial in their relations with China will find that they have access to this, that they're on that list, as well as the fact that they say that it's been about which countries that airlines feel they're going to be able to get critical mass from. As you can imagine, airlines have really struggled through 3 years of tight COVID restrictions, and so one analyst I've been speaking with, an insider in the Chinese travel space, says that it will be very much so in consultation with these airlines as to where they feel that they may be able to get travellers to go to. Italy was one country that was named as a potential thing. But as I say, what this seems to reflect is it's going to be a staged, slow reopening for a sector that has really felt the effects of 3 years of tight COVID restrictions.
Katie Silver there, that's the business stories. Plenty more to see on our website. Do take a look, but goodbye for now.
There's a path right where you are. Now let's have a coffee. Where do we go from here? Anywhere you like.
Having a global perspective creates a deeper understanding. Because in our connected world, all news is international.
The impact on Europe and the rest of the world would be devastating.
So, for in-depth analysis,
Carved from the sandstone. Just take a look around, you can see how popular this place is. It's the most visited in all of Jordan. But having all of these people here can bring problems. The delicate rocks are easily damaged by tourists touching the monuments or walking off the designated trails, especially in places where excavations are underway. But now there's a project aimed at getting tourists themselves involved with the conservation of the monuments to help protect one of the most threatened sites in the whole of Petra. I'm liking your office here. I like what you've done with it.
No, it's a beautiful place.
Glenn is in charge of the site and tells me how the problems here started in the 1970s when the temple was first excavated.
Whenever you excavate a mine, you have to pull a lot of the earth out of the ground in order to reveal it. And so this earlier project dumped a lot of that earth, and so as you'll see, we're trying to re-excavate those earlier archaeological dumps.
The dumps are huge mounds of compressed earth which will take years to sort through.
We have specialists who come and actually work and train and work with the local community, training them in the tangible vocational skills to help them preserve the site in the coming years.
And the idea is that the locals then train tourists to help out too.
We're going to have them working on the soil dumps, looking for pottery and coins and other things the original excavation missed, to have the experience of actually doing archaeology for a day.
I've got some skills, man. Have you got a digger here or something?
Hey, we're ready for that. Ready?
Ilan shows me the sort of thing they're looking for.
One month store, we don't need them, we don't need them.
Yeah, that doesn't look very valuable.
This is the part of the job, and this is not a,
So that'd be the original people who lived here.
yes,
So that'd be very, very old.
yes.
Wow. That's 2,000 years old. Let's see if I can find any treasures. Okay, stand back. Let the master get to work. Is that cool? Let's look. That's done. I'm terrible, I can't find anything. Well, I might not be having much luck, but over the last few years, they've found all sorts here. Painted pottery, coins, lamps, and decorations from the temple. Now, as more pieces are retrieved and catalogued, it's hoped we can learn more about the everyday lives of the people who built this incredible city more than 2,000 years ago.
The Travel Show, your essential guide wherever you're heading, every weekend on BBC World News.
Hearing all these sandbags like this appear and disappear, and that really influences the way that the people live and adapt.
Can you hear the sounds of the wilderness?
It's everywhere, isn't it? 3D sounds.
Yes.
You can't get anywhere else. Or any kind of weather problems that you can imagine, we got them here. We have earthquakes, we have tsunamis.
That's why we have none of those things today, right?
And a lot of like people think they can not go to the water for surfing, and they can do. Everybody can surf. Everybody can surf. Everybody can surf.
Inspiring travel on the BBC.
BBC World News, I'm Peter briefly our top stories. China has said it will resume issuing visas to foreign nationals from Wednesday in a major easing of travel restrictions that have been in place since the start of the COVID pandemic. Leaders of the United States, Britain and Australia have given details of a defence pact which will provide Australia with nuclear-powered attack submarines.
Showing again what democracy can deliver. Our own security and prosperity, and not just across the entire world.
A state of emergency has been declared in Malawi after tropical storm Freddie struck the country for a second time, killing more than 100 people. The people risking their lives to get aid packages to remote Ukrainian communities as Russian forces try to stop them.
In the area where we have understood people were under very difficult occupation and went through so much misery.
And the city of Love takes on a whip of waste as the strikes continue, rubbish piled up in Paris. For all of you watching on PBS and around the globe, a very warm welcome. China says it will resume issuing visas to foreign nationals from next Wednesday in a major easing of the travel restrictions that have been in place since the start of the COVID pandemic. China hosted over 60 million visitors a year before the pandemic started, that virtually ground to a halt when the tough zero-COVID policy was introduced. Well, our China correspondent Stephen McDonald is in Beijing. He explained what's been planned.
Essentially, this is the last big time other visas have been being issued, but no tourists in here for more than 3 years. And to give you an idea of what a big deal this is, in the year before the pandemic started, 65 million international travellers came to Beijing. It's a lot of people. And in the interim, those sectors of the tourism industry geared up for foreign tourists. Businesses have closed, people have lost their jobs, and they will welcome the return of foreign tourists to this country. And you can really tell the difference in a city like Beijing, where I am now. You used to see foreign tourists around the streets all the time, especially around the Forbidden City and places like that. And it has been strange not having any tourists here. You even notice with little kids being more interested in seeing foreigners in recent times because they haven't been seeing any. So it will be a big shift for China to return to having big numbers of foreigners coming into the country again after a 3.5-year hiatus.
Still with all their Beijing. The leaders of the US, Britain and Australia meeting in California have given details of a defence pact that will provide Australia with nuclear-powered attack submarines. President Biden said the AUKUS agreement will boost security in the Indo-Pacific region for decades to come. China said it puts the alliance on the path of error and danger. Our political editor, Chris Mason, from San Diego.
A pact of old democracies coming together to counter a new and growing adversary, China.
Australia and the United Kingdom are two of America's most stalwart and capable allies. Our common values, our shared vision for a peaceful and prosperous future unite us all across the Atlantic and Pacific.
This is about projecting power and resolve. The backdrop and naval base, the images and the words, intended to work in unison.
The AUKUS agreement we confirmed here in San Diego represents the biggest single investment in Australia's defence capability in all of our history.
Joe, Anthony, we represent three allies who have stood shoulder to shoulder together for more than a century. Three peoples who have shed blood together in defence of our shared values. And three democracies that are coming together again to fulfill that higher purpose of maintaining freedom, peace, and security now and for generations to come.
Compare and contrast what you just heard and seen with this. China's leader Xi Jinping also promising to modernise its military, to turn this, he said, into a great wall of steel. Forrester, is China dangerous?
If China is a country with fundamentally different values to ours, and it represents a challenge to the world order, and that's why it's great that we are alert to that